I literally was in a former communist nation. And I asked that. I said, some people in my party, some of the lefties are talking about socialism now. What do you think? He's like, that's the worst thing ever. You're going to need a reality check if you ever adopt any of those things. You know, like you are morons.
Oops. Wrong button. Good morning, pineapples. Looking very good and very nice. Good morning, pineapples. Looking very good and very nice. Ning 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 ning. Welcome to the Wake Up America show from the Isle of Alderney. Southcott hanging in the chat. St. Selma, Quest Fanning, you are the first commenters. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. For those who don't know, I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Glad to have all of our friends joining us live. Dad Bod Baboon says it's so odd that the brain injury Lurch is the smartest person in the Democrat Party. It's like those people. Have you ever seen some of these videos where people will get like a brain injury and they come out like smarter? They turn into like a savant or something like that. It's kind of like that with Matt Unruh. Good morning, my fellow freedom fighters. Coffee up, armor on, the armor of God. You are now tuned into the most caffeinated quarter on the internet. Yeah, I get a double shot before every show. Helps me to poop. Richard Bell. Morning, rise and freedom. The Wake Up America show. Liberty doesn't hit snooze over here, and we don't wait for permission to speak freely. Free men don't ask permission. I'm your host, Austin Peterson, former presidential candidate, part-time meme war general, part-time karate sensei at the local Parks and Rec. Yes, that's true. And full-time microphone assassin. We got a lineup this morning that is hotter than Hunter Biden's iCloud backups. We begin today with a story that we have been covering for 3 days now, a story that has gripped the entire nation's. The entire nation is talking about this Ukrainian refugee, who was murdered on a train in Charlotte. Iryna Zarutska came to America fleeing war, trying to avoid getting stabbed in the neck in a place like Ukraine, ended up being stabbed in the neck in a place that seems to have almost all of the hallmarks of a war zone these days, an inner city in the United States. She was murdered on a commuter train by a 14-time convicted felon who never should have been free to walk the streets, let alone ride the light rail. The pictures that are coming out, Stephanie had not seen the video for a long time, but now that everyone is talking about it this morning, she wakes up and she's checking her feeds. And she sees the image of the girl covering her mouth, looking so innocent directly after she was stabbed. Now the racists on the left are starting to conspiracy theorize about it, essentially that it didn't happen the way that they said it does, or this is staged. Yes, that is happening. My first guest this morning on the Wake Up America show, Professor Wilfred Riley, actually commented. We're going to have him on the show this morning. This is not a tragedy, just a tragedy. This is an indictment of every single politician, judge, and bureaucrat who thought compassion meant coddling criminals instead of protecting citizens. Pam Bondi's Department of Justice is saying that they'll seek the death penalty. But here's the thing we're going to explore this morning. Why did it take a murder this horrific to finally get their attention? I'll deep dive into that here in just a minute. Pam Bondi's DOJ hopefully will get the conviction. We'll see. I'm sure they will. At 7:30 a.m., we're going to be joined by, like I said, by Professor Wilfred Riley. He's going to break down the racial optics on this story. He's going to talk about the media silence, or now that the media is actually talking about it, the story is not the incident itself. The way that the left, the Brian Stelter types over at CNN, the way that Axios and all these other left-wing institutions are covering this story is they're covering the right wing's reaction to this story, the outrage, the absolute outpouring of rage that people like ourselves feel about an incident like this. I'm going to go down underneath my computer right now because the computer that I use to show video clips is frozen. It freezes a lot, unfortunately. I'm trying to fix it. Don't know how. Just upgraded it to Windows 11. And does everybody have to upgrade their Windows 10 computers? So here we go. I'm going down below. Here, this is how I have to do this when you don't have a staff. Hold on. To do it for you, producer. It's unfortunate, but there's got to be a better way to like set this up. So embarrassing. There we go. Okay. So at 8 o'clock this morning, since it is Wednesday, we're going to have the legal wrecking ball himself, Judge Iryna Zarutska. He's going to join us to talk about two explosive questions. How can anybody commit a dozen violent felonies, there we go, and still walk free? He'll answer that question. And then he wrote an article this week that's coming out on judgenap.com asking if the Trump administration just started a war with Venezuela after blowing up a so-called narco-terrorist boat in international waters. You want to hear what the judge has to say about maritime law, executive power, and bad ideas on boats. We'll hear from him this morning. At $75 today, we're going to unlock today's 5-minute mini documentary. What's it about? I can't say, but trust me, it's got all the drama, danger, and government failure that you would expect. At $100 today, we unlock a special breakfast theater featuring Mark Zuckerberg himself on the show, but only if we let him do it from inside a VR jungle gym while live streaming his inner monologue just through an emotional support AI. So if we raise $100 today, either through Rumble Rants or at thegriftshop.com, that's thegriftshop.com. You're going to get 12 minutes of Zuck squirming, glitching, and just maybe accidentally telling the truth. So if you want to see Mark Zuckerberg today on the show, you know what to do. Don't forget, guys, too, to join the rebellion inside of our Discord, the For Liberty Network Discord. The meme war never sleeps there. When we are not live, we are live over on Discord. And if you or somebody you know is ready to get out of the cubicle and get into a political campaign with a full-time paid job in politics, I have got it for you. Go to campaignjobsnow.com/apply. That's campaignjobsnow.com/apply. Let them know that Austin sent you. They're helping liberty-minded warriors get hired with good paying full-time jobs right now. So campaignjobsnow.com/apply. All right, folks, we got to talk. I don't want to start your day like this. I hate this story, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. What happened on this Charlotte commuter train is something that should rip this country's soul wide open if we still had one. And it appears that that might actually be what's happening here. Iryna Zarutska, 23 years old, she escaped a literal war zone in Ukraine. She comes to the United States, land of the free, and she wants safety. She's looking for safety, for some dignity. Here we are, land of the free, shining city on the hill. She believes what she's heard overseas. Instead, she dies alone, terrified, blood running down her legs and all over the floor of a Blue Line train in Charlotte, North Carolina. She was killed by a 14-time felon, convicted felon, who never should have been out of jail. Carolyn Leavitt, press secretary of the White House yesterday, went on a tear, 5-minute tear, which we won't be able to play all of it here, but you can feel the unbridled anger emanating from her. Take a listen.
Today, I would like to address the tragedy that has not received nearly enough media attention, the brutal murder of Iryna Zarutska. Here are the facts that many outlets have shamefully and intentionally failed to report until President Trump drew attention to it. On August 22nd, Iryna Zarutska was stabbed to death on the rail system in Charlotte, North Carolina by a savage career criminal. This is a public transportation system that many in the area use every single day to go to school and work. Iryna was on the train that night traveling home from her job at a pizzeria, still in uniform from her shift. This beautiful, innocent 23-year-old young woman was a Ukrainian refugee who had recently fled her country for a chance at a safer life and a promising new beginning here in the United States of America. But tragically, a public transportation system in a major American city was more dangerous than the active war zone that she left. The president and the entire White House are praying for her family and friends during this unimaginably difficult time. But while we extend our thoughts and prayers, we must also seek justice for this crime and call attention to this heinous incident. Surveillance video of the killing was finally released to the public this past Friday. It shows the alleged killer, DeCarlos Brown Jr.
DeCarlos Brown Jr. If we lived in a just country, you'd never hear his name again because he'd be erased from the face of the earth. But we don't live in that country anymore. We live in their country now. We all have to live in a country and share a nation with people like DeCarlos Brown Jr., and they are thrust upon us. It's not as if this isn't a situation where, we're all choosing to live in these communities voluntarily. No, because we don't have a choice when people like this, who are supposed to be not in our communities, they're supposed to be in either in little boxes above ground or in little boxes below ground, but they force them out amongst us, the left, the Democrats, the people, the Zoran Mandani types, right? This judge, Teresa Stokes, they force them out to live amongst us in the community, to inflict them on community. Because, of course, this is all part of the communist plot to incite revolution and to stoke fear and anger and discord, because they want riots. They want there to be discord. They want there to be pain because, of course, inside of them is the chaos. Inside of them is the pain. Inside of them is the schizophrenia, the mental illness. Why is mental illness even a defense? We're going to ask Professor Wilford Riley about that when he joins us here about 15 minutes from now. Brown had 13 prior convictions. That's not arrests. That's convictions, including armed robbery. In January of this year, he was released after calling 911 for a fake emergency. That's a misdemeanor. Judge set him free with no bail. The judge is named Teresa Stokes. And if you're wondering who she voted for, I'll bet my last bean of Founding Flavors coffee that it was not Donald J. Trump. According to new surveillance footage that was just released, Brown watched Iryna for several minutes. He sat behind her, he waited, and then pulled out a pocket knife and stabbed her in the neck. She covered her face, tried to crawl away. No one helped until it was far too late. And to be honest, it's probably the case that no one could have even helped her anyway. People are angry right now. They're lashing out, saying ridiculous things about self-defense and what real men on that train should have done. And certainly if there was a real man on that train who had a firearm at that point, maybe he could have done all of society a favor, saved us millions of dollars and all this national angst, having to prosecute this guy and find out who he is by just executing him there on the spot. Instead, she was surrounded by people who were not there for her, who didn't help her or couldn't help her. There's a lot of facts about this that we don't even know, even with the video. Joni Rankins in the chat says this judge apparently hadn't even passed the bar. How is that possible? That's honestly a really good question. Joni, thank you for joining us. He sat behind her. He waited. He pulled out a pocket knife and he stabbed her in the neck. She covered her face, tried to crawl away. I would show you the image just of her face after she was stabbed, but the computer's frozen again. Where's the button? At least my soundboard works. Nobody helped. 15 seconds later, she collapsed to the floor, dying. The White House finally weighed in. Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said the monster should have been locked up and Iryna should be alive. That's the Trump White House. Not Kamala, not AOC. Right. The left, they've been silent as the passengers on the train. Unless it's their lapdogs in the media attacking us for bringing up this story, then the left is actually mentioning it. Attorney General, and this is why in these kinds of situations or stories, imagine what the situation would be if Trump was not in the White House right now. I've been getting a lot of pissed off leftists in my feed because I was on the Occupy Democrats page the other day complaining about tariffs. Don't worry, plenty of tariff complaints will be coming later when we have Dr. Phil again on the show. Dr. Phil Magnus will be joining us. And they're all like, aren't you so, you got, the leopard ate your face. You got what you voted for when you lost your shoe business because of tariffs, Austin. You voted for this. I voted for this. I voted to have a Department of Justice official who would go after this kind of crime, go after federally this kind of criminal. That's what I voted for. I just have to put up with all the stupid economic illiterate thinking as well. You take the good, you take the bad, you add them all, and there you have the facts of life. The facts of life. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. Hope you guys are joining us live this morning and clicking the like button when you do. If today's the first time that you've ever watched the Wake Up America show, we'd love to have you be a regular guest. Austin, how do I become a regular guest? Just click that follow button over on the Rumble feed. When you see that follow button, you click on it. And if you're watching us on the app, it will help to, give you a notification whenever we go live, which is every Monday through Friday from 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. It's, again, 5 days a week. If you see that phone number at the bottom of the screen, that's 573-319-1586. 573-319-1586. Looks like somebody wants to unlock that bonus content today. Brad Beckman. Brad is helping us to unlock that bonus content by buying the lovely Eaton Bush 1969 campaign hat. So that's good. That means we're at $33 raised towards the $75 and $100 bonus goal. So if you guys are wanting to see the mini documentary today, once we hit $75 raised, that will do it. And if we hit $100 raised, then we've got Mark Zuckerberg on the Wake Up America show today. Aren't you guys big Mark Zuckerberg fans? Oh, okay. So thank you very much, guys, for helping unlock that bonus content. We appreciate you. 10 minutes until Professor Wilfred Riley joins us live this morning. This monster should have been locked up, and Iryna should still be alive today. The racists are having a grand old time with this. I saw yesterday that they were saying that if she were racist, that she might still be alive. Interesting point of view. We'll ask Professor Wilfred Riley, he's a black man, about that statement, what he thinks about how the racists have weighed in on this topic and how they've made themselves known on it. I'll ask him that question straight up, and we'll see if he has some insight he can share. The mayor of Charlotte, Vi Lyles, issued a hollow statement promising more security, but the next day, 0 new guards at the stations, no police presence, nothing changed. One writer was interviewed the next day. They said, there's no protection. The mayor is as responsible for this girl's death as the killer himself. And honestly, I think he's right. What about you? Should the judge who released Brown face criminal charges for reckless endangerment? Do you think that the Biden White House would have responded faster if Iryna had been black or trans or undocumented? If the DOJ was willing to charge Brown, why aren't they charging the judge? We'll talk to Judge Napolitano about that at 8 a.m. Central on the Wake Up America show. Do you think that the Biden White House would have responded faster if Iryna had been black, trans, or undocumented? Drop your comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one. Should we bring back mandatory minimums for violent repeat offenders? And last question, do you feel safe riding public transit in a Democrat-run city? Love to hear your thoughts on this one. Brown got 13 convictions and still got a train pass. I get one parking ticket. Missouri wants to take Hazel away from me. Pam Bondi's going to fry this guy so hard he's going to be eligible for carbon offsets. Iryna came to America for freedom. The woke elite gave her frontier land, but without the mouse ears and way more blood. Judge Teresa Stokes said she released Brown on the condition he returned to court. Lady, he couldn't even return a Blockbuster Video in 2002. We're going to speak to the author of Hate Crime Hoax and Lies My Teacher Told Me. He's a professor of political science at Kentucky State, one of the few academics left in America with a spine still intact. He is famous for debunking crime myths, destroying race narratives, and he's been weighing in on the brutal murder of Iryna Zarutska and the cultural rot that made it possible. He's going to join us here in about 7 or so minutes here on the Wake Up America show. Normally, this is a place where I would play for you a video, a clip, but the computer is frozen again. Joni Rankin says, sadly, Clinton said he regretted 3 strikes because it loaded the jails. May have been, but can we really allow people like this to just walk free amongst us? Can we really just allow people like this to continue? I mean, Elon Musk is calling for expedited death penalties, and my first instinct is to say no, but at some point, enough is enough. At some point, enough is enough. We shouldn't have to live like this. We shouldn't have to live amongst these people. These people should not be allowed to live amongst us. And I don't know what the minimum should be. Instead of 3 strikes and you're out, maybe 4 strikes and we cut off your balls. Would love to hear your thoughts on that, though. You can send us a text at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586 is the text message. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you just program that phone number into your phone, you guys won't have to worry about that phone number because you'll have it in your phone. So, okay. One listener did text in, says, good morning. Regarding the Charlotte stabbing, it was wrong. He's a repeat offender. Struggle with the death penalty, but they say fry the effer. Yeah. It's really hard to... Days like today really make question my opposition to the death penalty. My brother, Justin Peterson, handsome son of a gun, says, totally agree. You can't allow these violent people to walk amongst us. This is literally anarcho-tyranny. Joni Rankin says the 3 strikes law, that was before selling marijuana could get you a double-digit sentence. Good point, Joni. Thank you. It looks like it's 724, 725. Just want to remind you guys, if you want to one-shot the bonus content today, the first live class for my AI course is already over, but it has been recorded and uploaded to the coursework for my AI class. Ask any of the about almost a dozen people who are in the class and who have been able to take the coursework already on how to use AI, if it's been worth it so far to them. I would venture to wager that almost all of them at least would say that they've already gotten $150 worth of value out of the class that you can take advantage of now. And the live classes are still ongoing, so now's a great time to do so. Plenty of people, I think, in the chat or part of the live Wake Up America show community are part of the AI course and may even be here in the Rumble comments, and I'm sure would be glad to endorse it for you. If you've been thinking about learning how to use artificial intelligence to make your life better, like I have, my brother Justin here in the chat has absolutely changed his life with his AI course, with using AI. He will tell you as well that if you're not using AI, then you're going to be left behind, and it's a great time to start learning how to become a master of it. And you can do so for a very low price by going to forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4libertyshop.com. And if you go to forlibertyshop.com, it's the second item down underneath the Department of War hoodie that we have. So, Robbie, thank you, sir. He says, for the new computer fund. +5. +2 +50 puts us at $90 raised already, guys. Thank you so much. That means you guys get to watch the bonus content right now, but still recommend you head over to the Griff Shop, forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4libertyshop.com, guys, during the break, and get yourself a Department of War hoodie. Sign up for the AI course. You're going to love it. You won't regret it at forlibertyshop.com. And it's hosted on where? The For Liberty Network.
After an appeals court slapped down President Donald Trump's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA, to impose high tariffs without congressional authorization, he complained that if the import taxes go away, the U.S. will become a third world nation. That would be quite a trick. Despite the president's repeated claims that high tariffs produce greater national wealth, most countries that adopt them are very poor, while those that keep trade barriers low are wealthier. Third world status might be in America's future, but it's more likely to result from tariffs rather than from their absence. As Reason's Jacob Sullum noted earlier this week, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit upheld a unanimous ruling by the Court of International Trade that Trump exceeded his authority when he relied on IEEPA to unilaterally impose stiff import taxes. Both courts noted that Trump's use of IPA, which does not mention tariffs at all, was unprecedented and involved an assertion of authority that implicated the major questions doctrine, which aims to uphold the separation of powers, Sullum wrote. The tariffs remain in place while the administration asked the U.S. Supreme Court to review the decision. In his usual style, the president didn't just file an appeal, he also fulminated about his loss in court. More than $15 trillion will be invested in the USA, a record, he posted on Truth Social. Much of this investment is because of tariffs. If a radical left court is allowed to terminate these tariffs, almost all of this investment and much more will be immediately canceled. In many ways, we would become a third world nation with no hope of greatness again. Trump has repeatedly linked tariffs to the country's wealth. At the Conservative Political Action Conference in February, he insisted the U.S. was at its wealthiest relative to the rest of the world, from 1870 to 1913. That was our richest because we collected tariffs from foreign countries that came in and took our jobs and took our money, took our everything, but they charged tariffs. But if tariffs are linked to prosperity, it's an inverse relationship, according to a recent report on America's declining economic freedom for Canada's Fraser Institute. The authors, Robert A. Lawson of Southern Methodist University and Fraser's own Matthew D. Mitchell, write, high tariff countries are generally low-income countries, while low-tariff countries are generally high-income countries. In the high tariff countries, average GDP per capita is just $9,703 per year, while in low-tariff countries, it is $43,500 per year. In 2023, the U.S. had an average tariff rate of 3.3%, which put us in the company of such countries as Singapore and Hong Kong, 0% each, Brunei, 0.5%, Israel, 1.3%, New Zealand, 1.9%, Australia, 2.4%, and Iceland, 3.3%. This year's tariff shift has been marked by wild fluctuations, but the average tariff rate on April 15th was 28% and is now around 19%. That puts the U.S. amongst the likes of Zimbabwe, 18%, Chad, 18.1%, Republic of the Congo, 18.1%, Algeria, 18.9%, and Egypt, 19%. At 28%, average U.S. tariffs were higher than those of Djibouti, 20.9%, and Sudan, 21.6%, and exceeded only by the Bahamas, 32.5%. The U.S. used to have the sort of tariff rates that correlate with prosperity. The Trump administration is now emulating the trade policies of what he has termed in the past shithole countries. In all honesty, Trump didn't start this slide, and he hasn't been alone in eroding America's trade freedom or in dinging its overall economic liberty. As of 2022, the U.S. stood at 53rd out of 165 countries for freedom to trade in Fraser's Economic Freedom of the World EFW Index, having fallen from 8th place in 1995. That fall wasn't because of tariffs, which were relatively low at that time. It was because of non-tariff barriers of the sort that Trump complains are imposed on Americans by other governments, but which the U.S. has adopted to its own detriment in recent decades. U.S. trade freedom peaked in 1980 at 9.3 on the 10-point scale, began to slide for the next 2 decades, and then declined more precipitously in the last decade and a half, comment Lawson and Mitchell. Much of this decline was driven by controls on the movement of capital and people. In particular, the U.S. imposed steeper capital controls in 2009, and more stringent limits on the freedom of foreigners to visit in 2014. That is, despite relatively low tariffs before 2025, the U.S. wasn't as wide open as many people, Trump included, believe. Lawson and Mitchell point out that, with the exception of China, every country Trump has singled out for treating America unfairly is more open to trade than the United States itself. That's unfortunate because free trade doesn't just correlate with current prosperity. As seen from the list of which countries have high tariff rates and which have low ones, it helps countries to become wealthier. Few propositions command as much consensus among professional economists as that open world trade increases economic growth and raises living standards, Harvard University economist Greg Mankiw wrote in 2006. Anything that stands in the way of trade, whether it's high tariffs, controls on the movement of people and capital, or other barriers to investment and exchange, deprives people of the freedom they need to start businesses, create jobs, and improve their lives. High U.S. tariffs have a further perverse effect in that they tax Americans, effectively filling government coffers by punishing our own people for seeking the goods they want beyond the border. Eroding trade freedom reduces total economic freedom, of course. This year's higher tariffs are predicted by Lawson and Michel to bump the U.S. from 56th place to 76th place for trade freedom in the EFW index, and cause the U.S.'s overall economic freedom rank to fall from 5th to 10th. That will be a real tragedy. Economist Deirdre McCloskey observed in 2016 that the enrichment and growth and human flourishing of recent centuries can be attributed to liberalism in the free market European sense. We've become wealthy from the freedom to trade domestically and across borders. The U.S. risks third world status as the president warns that danger lies in adopting the illiberal trade policies of countries that remain poor, largely through their rulers' bad decisions.
Guns off the street. What we got to do, if we really want to see homicides go down, is keep bad guys with guns in jail, because when they're in jail, they can't be in communities shooting people. So when people talk about what we're going to do different, or what we should do different, what we need to do different, that's the thing that we need to do different. We need to keep violent people in jail. Right now, the average homicide suspect has been arrested 11 times prior to them committing a homicide. That is a problem. That is a problem.
I agree. That was the police chief of Washington, D.C. in 2023. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Thank you for joining us live so early in the morning. If you haven't already, click the like button. And if today's your first time watching the Wake Up America show, we'd love to have you be a regular guest. So click the follow button as well. Joining me now, a guy who doesn't just stir the pot, he kind of pressure cooks it until it explodes. He's the author of several books. One is Hate Crime Hoax, Another Lies My Teacher Told Me. You've seen him destroying race narratives online. His name is Professor Wilfred Riley, a.k.a. the Beast of X himself, Wildebeest 630 over on X. Good morning, Professor. Welcome to the Wake Up America show.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Professor, you tweeted the other day on this case, empathy is mostly bad. That's a kind of a hot take in this kind of scenario. Can you unpack what you meant when you said empathy is mostly bad, especially in the context of the Charlotte train murder, please?
Yeah, this is something I've said from time to time, and it's obviously kind of half serious. Like we're trolling online. It's good to have empathy for your child, for your husband, that kind of thing. But what I mean is that empathy has generally been thought of as like a local virtue. The Catholic idea, that's my religious tradition, is ordo amoris. Like you feel that for people near you, you'll do almost anything to help out a sick best friend, that kind of thing. But when you start expanding that deep idea of personal caring to everyone in society or to enemies in foreign wars, you get these idiotic results. I mean, anyone who's online and who leans right is seeing what's called the heat map, right? Where it's like, who do you care about? And for conservatives, and by the way, for mentally normal people, those categories really overlap. You don't hate anybody. There's something called the harm principle, the non-aggression principle, but you care about the people that are kind of in this circle. Like it goes out to like the limits of your community for direct financial aid, and then it might fight in the war for your country. And then beyond that, there's really nothing. Like, I mean, I hunt. You know, I don't hate animals, but I don't really feel a great deal of empathy for like a bull elk. It's a dangerous creature of another species. So that's like the normal pattern. If you look at how modern libs, is the term that comes to my mind, feel, the heat map gets brighter out here. There's this idea of the world is Mother Earth. It's all unified. That's what you really love. And then as you get to the people in your own community or your family, there's a little less heat. And like there are different ways to interpret this that might be technically off in terms of the data, but that's the general pattern. Like blooming red over here, if you're on the left, I love the world, I want to improve human life. And if you're on the right, it's the blooming red core is around your family, your mother, your best friend, your mates in war, that kind of thing. And what I'm saying is that when you take, then last line, but when you take that feeling of like, I love everyone, and you extend it to like illegal immigrants, you get just stupid outcomes. Like the 8 million people walked across the border during the last presidential administration because nobody could just stand at the border, put some 18-year-olds with guns on it and say like, you know, Jose, we wish you a better life. You're a master carpenter in Monterey, like unionize down there. We have a lot of people that do that here already. And I think that not being able to say that is bad.
I agree. Pulling up another one of your tweets here, you say, we're probably about to see a hard right white version of Black Lives Matter, where the names of attractive Caucasian victims of interracial crimes like Iryna Zarutska go viral monthly. Fundraisers are set up for the white participants in minor street fighting incidents. Millions of people become terrified to do things like ride trains, etc. You say no moral take, really. National media glazed the first movement for years. You said, mathematically speaking, it'll be another non-productive mass hysteria if millions of people genuinely start panicking about driving around blacks versus driving while black. Can you explain that in more detail, Professor?
Yeah, and I mean, I thought that the tweet itself was already a little bit long-winded, but I mean, it's fairly obvious. Like when people right now, and I do think that us doing that on the right are backlashing to Black Lives Matter and Believe All Women and Me Too and, you know, Brown, the last discovery of America, and all this stuff that everyone can identify verbatim, right? But I don't think that large in-group identity movements in a diverse country where the huge majority of most people, Asians, middle-class blacks, Jews, whites, are pretty successful, are all that useful. And I think you're definitely seeing the white response right now, though. I have no particular problem with Shiloh Hendricks. She seems like a funny lady, but I mean, this is someone who screamed nigger. We're on this edge media, but I mean, at a little kid who is like maybe rummaging through her bag. I mean, there are diverse reports on this like stupid street fighting incident. She got charged with assault. Some Somali guy came over, started yelling at her. She yells at him, racially insults him. I mean, so this is just a person, tough white person, in an integrated urban area where there's conflict in both directions. This happens, the story goes viral, and she's given $1.2 million by the internet. You can think, one, this is a bad person. That's one option. You can think, two, okay, maybe we should help her move out of that neighborhood, give her 20,000. That would be the outer extreme of the heat map. When she got $1 million, I was watching this and kind of laughing because, I mean, there were a couple of these going on at once. There was the Carmelo Anthony fundraiser, which is even worse. This is for a guy that killed a kid. But all these people online are posting these images of just random citizens and giving them large amounts of their personal money. And I think that's one of those things that when you're talking about a moral panic or a hysteria, that would be a pretty good sign of it. And we've seen that happen again. I mean, it looks like this girl was completely in the right, sort of. But the young Scottish girl who pulled a knife and a hatchet on a guy, also a white guy, by the way. It was a Bulgarian, maybe half gypsy immigrant that had
that's not white. I'm sorry, Professor. I have to stop you there.
Bulgarians are white?
No. Gypsies? Mm-mm.
Gypsies, I mean, gypsies maybe. Bulgarians definitely. I mean, so like... But I mean, this is, again, what I'm talking about. Like, also, you're seeing these definitions of white. Like, one of the things that I did online was actually poll people and ask, like, which of these groups, I was kind of tweaking the term heritage American. But I asked, which of these groups do you think are actually heritage Americans? And it was like 21% said no for Italians.
Yeah, that's how it used to be in the United States. The Italians had to earn
blacks, like 25% no.
And well, I mean, everybody wanted to differentiate themselves from the Irish at the time and the blacks. But here's the thing: the professional racists online, the ones who do it for clicks, they're all repeating the actual racists online who are doing it because they actually believe in it. And one of the things that they're saying, Professor, that I'm having a hard time debunking or disagreeing with is they said that if Iryna Zarutska were a racist, she would still be alive today. That's probably true. I'll tell you this, Professor. I don't know how it's make you feel about me, but I don't ever turn my back to a black man in a public place. I always keep an eye on him. And it's just because I've seen too many incidents. I've lived in the urban environment, the cities, And there's a lot of dangerous blacks in these cities. I recorded them. I have videos of them freaking out on the subways and things like that. How would you respond to a professional and an unpaid racist when they say that if she were a racist, she'd still be alive? Because I think that's probably true. Do you agree, disagree?
Well, I mean, sure. If she was a racist, since the person who attacked her was black, this is like an SAT question, right? Since the person who attacked her was black, if she didn't like blacks, that person wouldn't have attacked her. So yeah, I think in this particular case, racism might be an advantage. The obvious response there, of course, is that if 10 million people stop riding the trains because they're scared of black people. And by the way, I don't think reacting to what you're actually describing would be young working class black men in urban areas, by the way, or homeless people or something like that. Like, I live in Appalachia, so and this is kind of funny when people say, like, have you ever seen a crazy white criminal? Yeah, like, you see like 20 a day. Hey, take a bus in Louisville. It's a completely different scenario depending on where you live in the country. And I think, by the way, and no one's minimizing the overall black crime rate, still 2.1 times the white crime rate. I actually don't minimize that at all, which causes some issues for the black community. But I mean, I think the reason that there's this 100% association of black guy with like dangerous poor guy is that the media is controlled from like 5 cities. Chicago, which is where I'm from, is kind of the little brother among them. I mean, that's what we're talking about. You're talking about New York, this kind of thing. And in those areas, I mean, most of the gammering homeless people that you see are going to be of African descent. So no, I don't think being wary around them is a problem. I also think that if you were in a pretty good sized city, I mean, Harlan or something like that in Kentucky, you would have a very different perspective of who commits crime. Like, the white guys in jail aren't really going to be the people that are on the BART train in San Francisco, if that makes sense. Almost all crime in San Francisco is going to involve black or Latino, gang affiliated, or indigent people.
You had posted, I'm pulling up your tweet again, and real quick, let me just read a chat. We have a resident black man on our show, L Dubs. He says, I'm just going through the subways in Boston. I'm black. I make sure to keep a watchful eye on other black dudes as soon as I get a hint they're a bit off. You had posted this, and the tweet is pulled up right now. You had said, things like this might actually radicalize me if I was a working class white kid. And it shows Tariq Nasheed. He's kind of like one of the professional racists online. He may actually believe what he believes, but mostly what I see is like anti-white hate from him. And he's questioning from the photograph the legitimacy of the girl who had been stabbed, posting this image. And you had said something like this might actually radicalize you if you were a working class white kid. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, and interestingly enough, given the complexity of race in America, I don't think it really would have. Like, if I were a working class white kid in Louisville, 30% of my friends would probably be black. I'd probably be an athlete. Like, we'd be trying to go downstate together against like those punk ass preppy teams. Like, I mean, when I actually think of the demographic of like young men that I would mentor that fall in that zone, I don't know how accurate that is, but I was from Boston. I mean, you see a black millionaire in a suit pointing to a member of your ethnic group who's been killed by a member of his ethnic group, and not only that, not taking responsibility. Like, my response to this is, we really need to get a handle on crime in the black community. Now, I also feel that way about shit in other groups, excuse the language. Like, what percentage of trans kids, quote unquote, would be Caucasian and upper middle class? Like 99. You see all this type of stuff, like go outside in San Francisco. Most of the junkies I see there, not the dangerous bums, but the people that are stumbling around, like the Thriller video, or Caucasian or Latino, need to do something about that. But I mean, I think that the healthy response to that from anyone who's a tax-paying citizen in any ethnic group is to say, well, yeah, it's bad for kids to cut their dicks off. Okay, like, we're taking an L on that one, but you guys need to do blank.
Yeah,
if I saw someone just openly denying,
we normally don't worry about the trans people stabbing us, but they tend to shoot up churches. That, at least lately, that's where they've been going. The trans community has been going. But you say that we should tackle crime Bukele style. Nayib Bukele, El Salvador's president, zero tolerance, real consequences. What would that look like, Professor?
I mean, it would look like what it does there. Now, we have a lot of jail and prison facilities in the United States. So if I were emperor, I'd do a bunch of things. I'd probably fully legalize drugs, which would, increase the death rate for 3 years, but not beyond that, to be horribly blunt. I'd clear up some space in the prisons and jails. I think you'd need to build probably 25 more large prisons. But I mean, when people committed serious crimes, first of all, I would also kill a lot of people. I don't mean to do sort of faux tough talk, but when you talk about you're an adult black or Caucasian male, you've got 18 previous felony arrests. Like, I don't see anything wrong with bringing back something like the horse theft laws, where after X number of serious crimes, we quietly hang or shoot you and then we move on. So that would probably be a part of my policy if I were in charge of the country.
If he were emperor.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've teased about online is that I once had a dream. This is true, actually. I had a vision dream where I ended up as leader of a large society, presumably this one. And I'll sometimes joke online about what I would do if that actually happened. But I mean, one of those things would be enforcing the death penalty cleanly, not abusively, but pretty frequently, enforcing the kind of penalties they do in, say, Singapore. Two young men get in a fight. You're not going to go to jail for a year at public expense. You're going to get your ass kicked, basically, by someone who's trained in that. And then you're going to be let go with a black eye to go back to work. So that's part one. Part two. Well, part three is for people that just commit a mid-level crime, burglary, 5 times. You go to prison for 25 years. That's it.
You also say that the insanity defense should be abolished. You say, quote, "Who cares if the rapist is also crazy?" That's going to ruffle a lot of NPR tote bags. Explain.
Well, I'm pretty sure anyone who is wearing an NPR tote bag has blocked both me and you, since we're talking socials here. I don't think they're really in the audience. But the point there, the insanity defense is one of those things where the extreme ethics, extreme empathy that I see in Western and sometimes particularly white countries doesn't make sense. So the whole point of the insanity defense is you can't have a standard mens rea and actus reus, i.e. evil act, evil behavior, if you're crazy, because you supposedly can't conceive of doing evil in an organized way. Now, first of all, I think that's very false. We have a lot of brain scan research that shows that. But also secondarily, the reason you can't logically conceive of why evil is bad and do it anyway, if this makes sense, is that you're mentally worse than the normal person. You're already existing in that kind of mad dog zone where you might just snap and attack someone. So I don't see anything wrong with, again, hanging you if you are someone who just enjoys killing and can't see why it's wrong. And there are other solutions. The French used to put people like that in the Foreign Legion. You are born to die and you will go where men die. But at most, since we have this sort of, I would say, feminized, whatever you might think, a liberal influence in society, at least put people in institutions. So, you don't get the insanity defense. They put you on pills and 5 years you're out. If you are insane, you go to Arkham Asylum, which is basically what we used to do.
No, because everybody gets out of there. Don't bring up Arkham. That's everybody
Joker
gets out.
Keeps breaking them out.
Exactly. Everybody keeps getting out of there. Last question. You shared a meme about how the taxpayer class has become feminized and passive, and you say that this leads towards unchecked low-end misbehavior. Do you think this is the root cause why predators like DeCarlos Brown get chance after chance?
Yeah. Now, again, I mean, like I said, we're talking about someone. He's in my sex. I'm a male, my ethnic group. I don't want to make endless excuses, but at root, like if you're looking for root causes, that is the real root cause of crime. It's not some people are poor, right? It's that the upper class, and the picture I posted was of quote unquote Philly's Karen, who is something like a school superintendent, something of that order, walking over and taking a baseball from a little kid because she wanted it. His dad doesn't he wouldn't hit a woman, but just move her away. He gives her the ball. He's cringing. I mean, and I think when you see these kind of people, you realize that they're really not going to make laws that say 3 strikes and we cut off your head. And I really do think that's a source of the problem. And final comment, when people are critical of, say, normal tax-paying black guys, or they're critical of anything in their life, why hasn't the union said anything about this? That's fine. That's a great discussion to have at a bar. But realize that there are actual people in actual power. The ruling class is just the class that makes the laws that are facilitating these problems. It's not your black buddy or your buddy that votes Democrat. It's somebody that had the chance to keep that guy in jail. It's the judge who didn't do it. So, I mean, that's something to keep on point.
Professor,
there are leaders. They are supposed to lead.
This is great stuff. A lot to unpack. I wish I could have you for a full hour, but I don't want to be greedy. Professor, is there anything that you think we missed, anything you'd like to share, or maybe you'd like to plug before we let you go today?
I mean, I've written a bunch of books. I wrote the book Lies My Liberal Teacher Told Me. You should go buy it. I think it's still close to the bestseller list. But I'd actually close with something other than give me money since I'm doing okay. I think the one thing to remember about all these incidents is don't do what Black Lives Matter did, where people take, and this is distinct even from like how you behave in online banter, or whether you'll take an advantage from something that happened. Don't actually believe that you exist in this world of horrors. It's like the old demon painted tent meme from 4chan or wherever. Like, you, if you're on the train, are extraordinarily unlikely. Yeah, you might be wary about a young man or whatever, but like, you are very unlikely to be murdered. Like, you are your chance of dying because warriors of another race come after you. I mean, a typical year, it's like 500 over 200 million for whites. It's like 200 over 50 million for black people. So understand reality, like fight to improve society, but also recognize that you probably have a good, normal life. The best thing you could do for yourself is probably go to the gym.
And carry a gun.
Oh, yeah, and stay armed. Like, you know, learn how to use your arms like people have throughout history. You have a gun, you have a knife on you for most of these people. Yeah, just be armed, be fit, make money, close sales, date women, live life. Like, that's the actual advice you need for almost every angsty young man.
No, that we need to listen to Nick Fuentes to become incel groipers and be all racist.
I don't think so. I mean, and again, when you talk about like the minority conservatives, Nick Fuentes is a Mexican guy, like visibly.
No.
So like, it is. I mean, like,
no.
if there's a Spanish guy telling you to be a white supremacist, like, look at this and say, like, does this make sense? Is that really what I should be doing? I don't know.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to make sense. It's the modern world. Professor, thank you for all you do. People should follow you over on X at wildest. And you're reposted all over the place, all over my X timeline, so they can find you pretty easy. Thanks so much for getting up early and being so generous with your time, man. Keep on keeping on, man.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Is the brokenness of the nuclear family, the brokenness of the black family, the fact that black fathers are absent, that young black men turn to drugs and gangs.
How dare
and by the way,
well, the family, I think the family in general you can point to. I don't know that one race over the other works.
This is also true for the murderer who killed the two young children, a white man. Will you listen to what I'm saying? I literally said the broken nuclear family, both black families and white families. That murderer.
You singled out black families, but if you're saying all families, it's a different point.
It's especially evident in the black community, but it is also true that when fathers are absent, that young men are more likely to commit.
I'll put you guys on a text thread.
Put us together.
If you're
open to that, Liz, I'm open to it.
I'll put you together. Liz is open to conversation.
Let's do it.
Nina's open to conversation. That's why we're all here. It's not an easy conversation to have, but it's an important conversation to have. We'll keep
there was definitely no implied threats whatsoever at all. Good morning, folks. Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. Judge Napolitano joining us live in less than 5 minutes on this show. Before we go, though, to a break, but to get the judge on the set, I want to remind you all about the sponsor of this show, the Expat Money Online Summit 2025. The future is in Latin America. How freedom-minded families can relocate south of the border, legally eliminate their taxes, and drink good wine on the beach. Ooh, delicious Malbec Argentine wine. Join this jam-packed 3-day event. Learn how to launch your Latin American Plan B. I'm certainly looking into it. And I will be on the panel just 30 days from now. Go to expatmoneysummit.com. That's expatmoneysummit.com. Join our friends Mikkel Thorup, and Mylin Salavaria, myself, and many others who will be there. It's an online summit. You don't have to worry about trying to get anywhere. Although next year's summit will be in Panama. So if you guys are interested in seeing me on a VIP panel, if you want to get access, you can sign up. It's free. You can get a free ticket and see some of the live broadcasts and replays. If you want the VIP ticket from it, then use my name, AUSTIN. That's AUSTIN. If you go to the expatmoneysummit.com website and use my name, Austin, you'll be able to watch the VIP panel, expatmoneysummit.com. Thank you very much to Mikkel Thorup and all of our friends down there looking into how to live La Vida Loca down south. Libertarians is trending over on X, I see, which is always bad. Always bad. Oh, God. Oh, I bet I know why. The Libertarian Party of New Hampshire just posted the picture of Iryna Zarutska after she'd gotten stabbed, and it said, "White Lives Matter." Oh, no, it's... Oh, God. Even the libertarians are murderously angry. Being libertarian posted is soft on crime policies led to this. We don't have to live like this. You know what? Who we need to ask about if we can go after these judges, or should we be able to go after these judges? You know who we should ask? A judge. And guess what? Judge Andrew Napolitano is coming up next. We're going to ask him about this, what it means for the judges who let him out. Does he think that the law should be changed to go after judges? I'm just going to guess. I don't know, but my guess is going to be that he doesn't think he should be able to go after judges. I wonder why. We'll be right back. It's the Wake Up America Show's For Liberty Network.
Here at Alligator Alcatraz, the fence keeps them in. But slip up, and you're on my plate.
Looks like breakfast is making a run for it. We got 3 hot meals trying to check out early from Alligator Alcatraz.
They can splash, they can sprint, but there's no escaping Alligator Alcatraz. Caught 2.
The third?
The swamp's got its own way of catching runaways.
Mama was wrong. Gators don't need toothbrushes. Just an honest job making America great again.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian, and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government. Get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me
guns off the street. What we got to do, if we really want to see homicides go down, is keep bad guys with guns in jail, because when they're in jail, they can't be in communities shooting people. So when people talk about what we're going to do different, or what we should do different, what we need to do different, that's the thing that we need to do different. We need to keep violent people in jail. Right now, the average homicide suspect has been arrested 11 times prior to them committing a homicide. That is a problem. That is a problem.
Welcome back to the Wake Up America Show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. We're glad and thankful to have you here. Don't forget to click the like button. That was the chief of police in Washington, D.C., saying that back in 2023. My next guest, you guys know him, former New Jersey Superior Court judge, libertarian legal lion, and the one who can make Democrats and neocons sweat bullets just by quoting the Constitution. Syndicated columnist, Fox News alum, the man whose newsletter reads like Thomas Jefferson got access to Wi-Fi. He's back to break down two major stories to strike at the heart of what liberty means in America. Judge Andrew Napolitano is joining us live right now. The Honorable Judge Andrew Napolitano. All rise. Good morning, Judge.
Good morning, Austin. Thank you for your over-the-top introduction. Thomas Jefferson on Wi-Fi. Wow, thank you.
Glad to have you here, Judge. This story is a brutal case, and everybody is on the right talking about going after these judges who let this man walk free after he had had 14 prior convictions, not arrests, but convictions. What's wrong with our legal system? How do people like this walk free? And should judges be held responsible for things like this? Your take.
Well, judges have had immunity for 600 years in the Anglo-American jurisprudential system. You can't expect a judge to be able to predict the future. However, there are certain flaws in judicial systems. For example, in North Carolina, where this occurred, the judges are popularly elected. That often produces a caliber of judge more attuned to politics than to the law. Now, I come from a system where we had lifetime tenure, like in the federal system. You tend to get people who are more serious about the judiciary, more understanding of the Constitution. I'm talking about people all across the ideological spectrum, and people less ideological, less concerned with what the public thinks. I mean, the more the judiciary becomes politicized, the more it becomes just a super legislature rather than an entity to do the right thing, whether it's popular or not. I don't know why this guy was free. The criminal record that I saw is not the same one you did. I saw 14 arrests and only 2 convictions, and neither was for a crime of violence. So maybe I saw the wrong one, or maybe you saw a different one. I don't know. However, North Carolina does not have cashless bail. The judges do have discretion. The purpose of bail is not to punish the person or to keep them off the street. The purpose of bail is to assure their return. Bail is not a privilege. Bail is a right guaranteed by the Constitution. So imposing high bail because you think the person can't make it is unconstitutional. The bail has to be something that is reasonable, both for the assurance of his return, public safety, and his ability to meet the bail. So a $3 billion bail on Elon Musk would be reasonable, but on this person, whom we all saw right before he slaughtered this young girl, it would not be reasonable. That's why judges are not clerks, and that's why they look at background and finances and all kinds of things. I probably set bail in my career for thousands of people, and it's never routine. It's always unique to the individual.
Pam Bondi's.
Now, in this case, Austin, the feds have no business being involved. There is nothing federal about this case. They want to charge him with an act of terrorism. They should read the definition of terrorism. Two or more independent acts of violence intended to affect the policy of the government. They're going to prove to this creep who slaughtered this girl was intending to affect the policy of the government. This is the same mistake they made with Luigi Mangione, and that charge will be thrown out because they can't prove that when Mangione shot the president of United Healthcare in the back, he was trying to affect the policy of the government. The feds are just, this is typical of the DOJ in all administrations, but the Trump people have exacerbated it. The feds are just trying to grab political headlines by taking over a case. I laughed this morning when I saw the FBI is assisting the Charlotte police. The FBI doesn't assist anybody. They come in and they take over. And most of them have never investigated a murder or a crime of violence in their careers. That's not what they do. So North Carolina has a death penalty. It has a fine law enforcement system. They should let the system play out.
Such a difficult case, Judge. I'm not sure if you saw the photographs, but it does lead one to.
I saw the photographs. If this had not been photographed, or if she had not been a refugee from Ukraine, we wouldn't even be talking about the case. It's murder. It's horrible, but it's a run-of-the-mill murder that has no bearing on the presidency of the United States or the Department of Justice or the FBI.
So Pam Bondi's DOJ, they've filed federal charges calling an act of violence on a public transportation system. The legal system has been breached in such a way because of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because of critical race theory. The left, when they take over the judicial system, they abuse it by prosecuting hate crimes. What they say, they call these things hate crimes. Now, I don't know if you heard the audio that was played a little bit after it. It does appear as if he said, "I got that white girl." It's 50-50 or whether or not. I mean, would that make it a hate crime technically under the current laws of the land? We both disagree with the concept of hate crimes, but could the DOJ pursue that angle if it is proven that he said something like that?
Well, they would certainly try. I mean, they'll throw as much up on the wall as they can in the hopes that something will stick. If they're seeking the death penalty, then it doesn't matter if this is a hate crime because there's no penalty more severe than that. However, this may not be a death penalty case. I don't know the law in North Carolina, but in most states, random killings are not first degree; they're second degree. I don't know what it is in North Carolina.
The judge in this case, who let him go, Judge Teresa Stokes. It's emerged that she presided over a previous case involving him, this DeCarlos Brown Jr., and it shows that she also just so happens to run a treatment center, a diversion center for violent criminals. You can see where this is going. People are accusing her of releasing these people out into the general population for a profit motive because they own these second chance centers that these people then go into that they collect public funds on. You're a sitting judge and you're profiting from the
if that's true, that's reprehensible. I mean, this is a defect in the system. In the federal system, in states like New Jersey, the judge cannot have any outside business or interest whatsoever. Being a jurist is a full-time job. If she wants to run a facility like this, she should not be trying criminal cases. She can't be profiting from decisions she makes on the bench. But that's not her fault. That's the fault of a system that permits her to do that. If she is making decisions on the bench in order to enhance her personal business, she's committing grave ethical violations and should be removed from the bench.
Yeah, she has been linked to a charity that provides mental health and addiction support by social media users. And I hesitate to use the word charity, Judge, because you and I know full well that most of these charities that are run by these leftist activists are really political organizations that they're using to write off their taxes, aren't they?
I don't know anything about this particular one, so I can't comment on it.
Okay, no problem. We're speaking to Judge Andrew Napolitano. He's the very honorable host of the Judging Freedom podcast, which you can download on any of your mobile devices. And he writes a weekly column at judgenap.com, which we're going to talk about right now. Judge, the Trump administration just blew up a Venezuelan boat allegedly run by the Tren de Aragua gang. No warning shot, no capture attempt, just a missile strike. Is this legal under international law?
It's unconstitutional. It's illegal. It's criminal. It's an act of murder ordered by the President of the United States, just like when Barack Obama used drones to kill Anwar al-Awlaki and his son, two Americans, while they were seated at and others, while they were seated at an outdoor cafe in Yemen. Just as Awlaki and the son had never been charged with a crime, these people weren't even charged with a crime. If what the president, first of all, the president doesn't know what he's talking about. The DOJ itself has said Tren de Aragua does not deal in fentanyl, they deal in human trafficking. So if they are trafficking human beings, either against their will or because the human beings have paid for it, why would you kill those human beings? None of this makes sense. He said they were on their way to America. It was a speedboat. It was 1,300 miles from the United States. There's no way it could have made it to the United States. What the Navy or the Coast Guard should have done, if they really had evidence that there were drugs on board destined for the United States, is stop the boat in American waters. U.S. claims 12 miles out. Board the boat, search for the drugs. If you find them, confiscate the drugs, arrest the people on the boat, charge them and interrogate them. It might help you find the source of the drugs. Instead, they not only killed these people, they destroyed the evidence. I think of this big picture. Trump says, we know they were guilty. We didn't have to put them on trial. Well, that attitude, if carried out, will destroy the Constitution and destroy personal liberty. Can a President Gavin Newsom decide that pro-life demonstrators trying to talk women out of getting abortions are terrorists, and since we saw them do this on tape, off them? It's the same thing. Even if these people are guilty of the crime for which Trump suggested, it doesn't carry a death penalty. So there's no legal basis for this at all. It's a terrible crime. It was unleashed by the Supreme Court in its misguided immunity decision. Trump apparently thinks he can do anything now, including kill people.
Judge, could Venezuela technically declare this an act of war?
I don't know the Venezuelan system. It happened in international law. It was a private boat. I suppose they could. I don't think they would. The last thing they want is to fight a war over something like this with the United States. Could Congress declare war on drug dealers? No. Congress can only declare war on a country that poses a material and imminent national security threat to the United States. That's not me. That's about 3 treaties that we've signed.
The administration says that this is self-defense against drugs. How would you react to that?
The administration doesn't know what it's talking about. We have a legal system that keeps you free until you commit the crime. We don't punish people without charges, without a trial, without conviction. If we do, then presidents would punish and kill, like Henry VIII, whoever they wanted.
Judge, would it be a more moral system if drugs for adults were legal, but that if you were to commit a crime while under the influence of drugs, that perhaps the punishment for such a crime might be more severe?
Well, of course it would. You own your own body. You have the right to put whatever you want in your own body. If you want to harm your body, you're at liberty to do so. If harming your body also harms the body of your children or some other innocent person, then obviously you are responsible for the natural and probable consequences of the ingestion of the drugs. But if it's just your own body that you're harming, you own your own body and you have the right to do with it as you see fit. I mean, I condemn the concept of gender transition from a moral perspective, but from a legal perspective, you have the right to do what you want.
Do you think then that minors should be barred by law from being able to receive gender reassignment surgery?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because they're too, just like minors are barred by law from having sex because they're too young to consent. I'm not sure where the age of reason is today. Maybe it's 15, 16, 17, 18. It's different in different states. But in terms of the body, of course, children should be barred and physicians should be barred from performing these irreversible procedures.
The anarchist wing of the Libertarian Party would disagree with you. As a matter of fact, when I ran for president in 2016, one of the lines that I got booed for was that I said that you should not be allowed to give dangerous drugs like heroin to 5-year-olds, for example. And the anarchist wing of the Libertarian Party roundly booed it. There's a video out there. It became a very famous and popular meme, Judge. I mean, how do we sort of deal with that kind of thinking in our ranks?
I didn't know that there were people who thought that 5-year-olds could take heroin. They're crazy.
Yeah, it happens in a lot of these third world countries. You see it in the Philippines. Often they'll show documentaries of children who are hooked on these kinds of substances because they have no legal system whatsoever. But there are a lot of people who share our label who would wear the same hat or have the same taxation as theft sticker, Judge, but they would say that they think that there should be no law, no courts, no police, and no one to defend children from drug dealers who wish to give drugs to minors or reassign their surgery. How would you respond to that level of an anarchist mindset?
Giving drugs to a minor or changing the minor's gender, even in the face of apparent consent, is an assault. The child is too young to consent. I mean, do these people support the slaughter of dogs as well? I mean, this is just reprehensible and hardly even worth conversing about on a national show. You're talking about people that are very sick. They may like Ron Paul for his economic reasons, but if they truly believe you can do this to children, they are sick and dangerous people. I don't care who they are.
Judge Andrew Napolitano, ladies and gentlemen, vindicating me. It's been, 10, 12 years since that came out. Fine, it's good to hear that. Somebody clip that in the chat. Judge, is there anything else you'd like to share, or would you like to give us a preview of your upcoming show, Judging Freedom?
Well, I have the great John Mearsheimer on today about the Israelis attacking an American ally with the consent of the President of the United States. A bribed President of the United States, by the way. This is the country that gave Trump the $400 million jet for his personal presidential use. And Professor Jeffrey Sachs will be on as well, talking about that. The great Pepe Escobar will be on, talking about how the great economies of the world don't need the U.S. anymore, don't need U.S. dollars, and couldn't care less about Trump's tariffs. So that's where we are today.
Download his show on any of your mobile devices, Judging Freedom. It's one of the most popular, it probably is the most popular libertarian podcast in the world. Judge Andrew Napolitano, thank you for your generosity in joining us every Wednesday here on the show, and we look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday.
Pleasure, my dear friend. All the best to you, Austin. Thank you.
And you as well. That's Judge Andrew Napolitano, ladies and gentlemen.
Parents, I have 4 at home. I had to teach them at home. My wife had to teach them at home. I am stunned at what you have said this week about your claiming to have wanted to reopen schools. I think you'll find that most parents believe you were the tip of the spear of school closures. There are numerous statements you made over the summer of 20, scaring people to death about the possibility of opening schools. And I hear no remorse whatsoever about the generational damage that's been done to these kids. I have 2 kids with learning differences. Do you know how hard it is for them to learn at home and not in a classroom that was designed for them? And for you to sit in front of Congress and the American people and say, oh, I wanted to open them the whole time. I am shocked. I'm stunned. And there are millions of parents who feel the exact same way.
Okay. Good job. Get him, Scott. The only reason to watch CNN. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning into the Wake Up America show. It's been fantastic to have so many of you joining us here live, especially over on X this morning. I'm noting that we have a quite sizable audience. Guys, if you're watching us live over on X right now, thank you. We're glad to have you here. If you don't know who I am, I'm Austin Peterson, and we'd love to have you be a regular guest every Monday through Friday from 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. We stream this show live. And I know you probably love X because you're on X, but if you want to join the community of people who are chatting, people who are hanging out, the Cool Kids Club, it's all happening over on Rumble at rumble.com/AP4Liberty. If you're looking for the crew, then head over here at rumble.com/AP4Liberty. You can drop a comment in the chat, meet people like Latrell, Entropy Nomad, meet new and interesting people, and then kill them. I Giving a Shits is there, and he gives a shits. Drew Van Runkle, BB for Liberty, Dredge Seamus, and Joni Rankin, who's now off to work. So hope you guys will join us over there at rumble.com/AP4Liberty. That's rumble.com/AP4Liberty. And while you're Googling and clicking and typing and hanging out this morning with us, why don't you head over to the Grift Shop? Yes, we call it the Grift Shop at thegriftshop.com and get yourself a Department of War hoodie. The judge won't like that. The Department of War hoodie available now at the Grift Shop at thegriftshop.com. Right up top, the Department of War hoodie. And the left is so stupid. Yesterday I posted this image. You probably know who this is right off the bat. But I posted that image, and the leftists who have been attacking me from the Occupy Democrats pages in the last few days, they all thought that this was me posting a picture of Donald Trump. And honestly, I can actually sort of see it. Not orange enough. But that's General George Patton. My grandpa fought in his army. You can get his hoodie, the Department of War hoodie, established 1947. The Department of War hoodies available at the Grift Shop at thegriftshop.com or just forlibertyshop.com. Takes you to the same place. While you're there, check out our AI Mastery course, AI for Creators, taught by me. This course going on now. You can sign up today over at the Grift Shop at thegriftshop.com. And we'll be right back. Professor, another doctor, Dr. Phil Magnus, back on the show talking about how we might all be getting refunds from the tariffs. Wouldn't that be nice? We'll talk about that and why some of the biggest anti-lockdown voices on the right were some of the biggest pro-lockdown voices in 2020. It's the Wake Up America show's For Liberty Network.
After an appeals court slapped down President Donald Trump's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA, to impose high tariffs without congressional authorization, he complained that if the import taxes go away, the U.S. will become a third world nation. That would be quite a trick. Despite the president's repeated claims that high tariffs produce greater national wealth, most countries that adopt them are very poor, while those that keep trade barriers low are wealthier. Third world status might be in America's future, but it's more likely to result from tariffs rather than from their absence. As Reason's Jacob Sullum noted earlier this week, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit upheld a unanimous ruling by the Court of International Trade that Trump exceeded his authority when he relied on IEEPA to unilaterally impose stiff import taxes. Both courts noted that Trump's use of IEEPA, which does not mention tariffs at all, was unprecedented and involved an assertion of authority that implicated the major questions doctrine, which aims to uphold the separation of powers, Sullum wrote. The tariffs remain in place while the administration asked the U.S. Supreme Court to review the decision. In his usual style, the president didn't just file an appeal, he also fulminated about his loss in court. More than $15 trillion will be invested in the USA, a record he posted on Truth Social. Much of this investment is because of tariffs. If a radical left court is allowed to terminate these tariffs, almost all of this investment and much more will be immediately canceled. In many ways, we would become a third world nation with no hope of greatness again. Trump has repeatedly linked tariffs to the country's wealth. At the Conservative Political Action Conference in February, he insisted the U.S. was at its wealthiest relative to the rest of the world, from 1870 to 1913. That was our richest because we collected tariffs from foreign countries that came in and took our jobs and took our money, took our everything, but they charged tariffs. But if tariffs are linked to prosperity, it's an inverse relationship, according to a recent report on America's declining economic freedom for Canada's Fraser Institute. The authors, Robert A. Lawson of Southern Methodist University and Fraser's own Matthew D. Mitchell, write, high-tariff countries are generally low-income countries, while low-tariff countries are generally high-income countries. In the high-tariff countries, average GDP per capita is just $9,703 per year, while in low-tariff countries, it is $43,500 per year. In 2023, the U.S. had an average tariff rate of 3.3%, which put us in the company of such countries as Singapore and Hong Kong, 0% each, Brunei, 0.5%, Israel, 1.3%, New Zealand, 1.9%, Australia, 2.4%, and Iceland, 3.3%. This year's tariff shift has been marked by wild fluctuations, but the average tariff rate on April 15th was 28% and is now around 19%. That puts the U.S. amongst the likes of Zimbabwe, 18%, Chad, 18.1%, Republic of the Congo, 18.1%, Algeria, 18.9%, and Egypt, 19%. At 28%, average U.S. tariffs were higher than those of Djibouti, 20.9%, and Sudan, 21.6%, and exceeded only by the Bahamas, 32.5%. The U.S. used to have the sort of tariff rates that correlate with prosperity. The Trump administration is now emulating the trade policies of what he has termed in the past shithole countries. In all honesty, Trump didn't start this slide, and he hasn't been alone in eroding America's trade freedom or in dinging its overall economic liberty. As of 2022, the U.S. stood at 53rd out of 165 countries for freedom to trade in Fraser's Economic Freedom of the World EFW Index, having fallen from 8th place in 1995. That fall wasn't because of tariffs, which were relatively low at that time. It was because of non-tariff barriers of the sort that Trump complains are imposed on Americans by other governments, but which the U.S. has adopted to its own detriment in recent decades. U.S. trade freedom peaked in 1980 at 9.3 on the 10-point scale, began to slide for the next 2 decades, and then declined more precipitously in the last decade and a half, comment Lawson and Mitchell. Much of this decline was driven by controls on the movement of capital and people. In particular, the U.S. imposed steeper capital controls in 2009 and more stringent limits on the freedom of foreigners to visit in 2014. That is, despite relatively low tariffs before 2025, the U.S. wasn't as wide open as many people, Trump included, believe. Lawson and Mitchell point out that, with the exception of China, every country Trump has singled out for treating America unfairly is more open to trade than the United States itself. That's unfortunate because free trade doesn't just correlate with current prosperity. As seen from the list of which countries have high tariff rates and which have low ones, it helps countries to become wealthier. Few propositions command as much consensus among professional economists as that open world trade increases economic growth and raises living standards, Harvard University economist Greg Mankiw wrote in 2006. Anything that stands in the way of trade, whether it's high tariffs, controls on the movement of people and capital, or other barriers to investment and exchange, deprives people of the freedom they need to start businesses, create jobs, and improve their lives. High U.S. tariffs have a further perverse effect in that they tax Americans, effectively filling government coffers by punishing our own people for seeking the goods they want beyond the border. Eroding trade freedom reduces total economic freedom, of course. This year's higher tariffs are predicted by Lawson and Michelle to bump the U.S. from 56th place to 76th place for trade freedom in the EFW index, and cause the U.S.'s overall economic freedom rank to fall from 5th to 10th. That will be a real tragedy. Economist Deirdre McCloskey observed in 2016 that the enrichment and growth and human flourishing of recent centuries can be attributed to liberalism in the free market European sense. We've become wealthy from the freedom to trade domestically and across borders. The U.S. risks third world status as the president warns that danger lies in adopting the illiberal trade policies of countries that remain poor, largely through their rulers' bad decisions.
no one can plausibly claim that a Christian family are in Hamas. Okay, so like what, tell me, you can't claim that they're in Hamas while simultaneously claiming that Hamas is a group of jihadis. They're Islamic extremists, which they also claim constantly, which I don't know if that's true, by the way. It seems more like a political organization, but whatever it is, they're telling us constantly they're Al-Qaeda. So it can't also be true that Christians are a member of Al-Qaeda. Sorry.
Yeah.
So then we know they're not in Hamas, so why did they get killed?
I got to get your reaction to this soundbite, because I thought, well, who thinks that?
We have to wait. We got better experts here on this morning, actual doctors. Good morning, Rise and Freedom. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. My next guest is like the Ron Swanson of economic history. Dry wit, sharp facts, deep hatred of bureaucratic nonsense. He's the director of research and education, American Institute for Economic Research, one of the original architects of the Great Barrington Declaration. He's been fighting government overreach for years, before it was cool. He's joining us to talk about two big stories: the Supreme Court's fast tracking of Trump's tariff showdown and his latest spicy column exposing the COVID hypocrisy of the new right. Our good friend, Dr. Phil Magnus. Welcome back to the Wake Up America show, Dr. Phil.
Be here.
We've got some big questions for you. So the Supreme Court is going to hear this case about Trump's sweeping global tariffs, and they're going to hear it really fast. Can you break down what this case is really about? Why is this a big deal?
Absolutely. So if you go back to the original Constitution, Article 1, Section 8 gives the power to assess tariffs to Congress and Congress alone. And yet at the beginning of Trump's second administration, he claimed to have inferred and invented a new presidential power to assess tariffs by executive order through the statute called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA. Now, IEPA was passed in 1977, but it does not even contain the word tariff and has never been used by any president prior to Trump to assess tariffs. He simply invented this power out of trying to read it between the lines of what IEPA does authorize, which is usually like sanctions against foreign governments that engage in hostile acts. But he's run with that and basically rewritten the entire tariff schedule of the United States. So it came under a lawsuit challenge back in May. And we've been through two lower courts that have both ruled Trump is acting illegally and his interpretation of IEPA is unconstitutional. So just as of yesterday, the Supreme Court granted that it was going to hear this case on an expedited schedule, this constitutional challenge to basically the entirety of Trump's tariff agenda. And if they uphold the two lower courts, which I think any reasonable originalist interpretation of the Constitution says has to be done, Trump's entire tariff agenda gets wiped out by court ruling.
Okay, so what is a refund going to be like? Are they going to send me like an Amazon gift card or something, Dr. Phil? Because
that's I wish it were that easy. So the way that U.S. tariff law works is that the actual tax payment is paid by the importer. These are U.S.-based companies that bring it in at the port, and they log a register with customs that basically says, these are the items that I'm unloading off of the ship or the airplane. And then they pay a tariff fee as they pull that out of a warehouse. And that fee goes to the government. Although they also pass on the cost of that tariff fee to people further down, basically the recipients of the goods that they're selling. So that's eventually you and me and other consumers out there. We pay higher prices because this tax has been built in, but the tax is only assessed on the importer. So if the government is ordered to refund this money, which is the remedy if this court case proceeds, it goes back to the importing companies, but it doesn't come to us, the people that actually ended up paying and incurring the incidence of this new tax. So
Trump
already
says,
you've got a distortion.
So the Supreme Court is going to hear this case, but they're a conservative-leaning Supreme Court. Conservatives are not necessarily friends of our liberty. Conservatives are like liberals in that they're only for their own liberties, not for the ones that people like us enjoy. Right? They're all for freedom as long as it's legal. So how do we? What do we think that the Supreme Court's going to say?
So it's always difficult to prognosticate on the Supreme Court what they're going to do because each justice has his or her own individual political philosophy. And they act on these precepts in different ways in different cases. But what we do know is that this challenge to the IEEPA tariffs is rooted in some very core conservative originalist legal doctrines. It's a straightforward case. This is not left-wing lunatic judge who's decided to just rage at Trump because they don't like something he's doing. The case was brought under two major legal doctrines. One's called the Major Questions Doctrine. And this basically says that the administration cannot infer a power on a question of major political or economic importance that Congress hasn't spelled out. And you may remember this from recent history in the Biden administration. The Supreme Court used this exact same doctrine multiple times to strike down presidential overreach by Joe Biden. It was one of the components of the argument against the EPA trying to regulate power plants out of existence under climate change and fossil fuel stuff. Well, the conservative justices on the Supreme Court, they cite this type of a doctrine as a basis to say, no, Congress did not give you that power, Mr. Biden. You cannot use the EPA in that way. So Congress, if they are going to abide by, or the court, if they're going to abide by their own existing precepts and precedents, it follows pretty straightforward that IEEPA tariffs are unconstitutional. And the same thing is that there's another doctrine in constitutional law called non-delegation. And this says that Congress cannot grant a power that's explicitly its own under the Constitution to the administration without putting very, very clear parameters on what the executive branch can do. They call it an intelligible principle test. And this goes way, way back in constitutional law, over 100 years on that test, and really back to the founding on the whole doctrine itself. And the idea here is that IEEPA, because it has no tariff power spelled out in the text of the bill, there are really no parameters or constraints in the way that Trump is interpreting it. That violates the delegation of constitutional power from Congress. And if the court, again, if the conservative-leaning justices on the court simply follow their own originalist principles, they have to strike down Trump's tariffs.
It's been a bit of a drama show lately in Trump's inner circle with this person's out, this person's in, this person now needs another deputy director of the FBI to come in. We just lost our attorney general here in the state of Missouri to now him being the co-deputy director of the FBI because there's some weirdness with Dan Bongino, apparently, co-owner of this network that I'm streaming live on right now, who has allegedly been very uncomfortable with what's been going on with the Epstein files, yada, yada, yada. But a lot of the people who are in the inner circle, some of the biggest anti-lockdown people out there, who praised for their heroics, standing up against the evil leftists, and are some of the biggest names on the right now. You sort of say that they're imposters when it comes to their credentials of COVID-19. They're all waving the anti-COVID flag now, but they were singing a different tune in 2020. Why did you write this?
Well, so I heard this Tucker Carlson podcast about a week ago. And, Tucker's been saying some very odd things. We had that clip at the beginning of the show where he's going to be defending Hamas. He's also moved into some very odd territory on other aspects of just interpreting the right. And he had this guest who's a post-liberal right-wing influencer by the name of Aaron McIntyre, or at least that's the pseudonym he seems to use. And he goes on. There's
no way that that guy's name is not Aaron McIntyre.
After a video game character, so it's a very odd thing. But this guy's he's a post-liberal new right podcaster, and he goes on Tucker, and Tucker asks him, well, what's your origin story? How did you become this podcaster guy? And he tells the story. He says, well, I was an old Sean Hannity Republican, but I was radicalized during COVID because the lockdowns were so terrible, and they absolutely were. I mean, I was fighting the lockdowns from day one when they were announced in March 2000. And this guy says, well, I had my conversion moment that radicalized me to the new right during the middle of lockdowns. And because he was so upset with lockdowns, he starts reading around on the internet, and he claims he found this character by the name of Curtis Yarvin, or Mencius Moldbug, who's this far-right, neo-reactionary blogger guy, and just all-around oddball who thinks that the American Constitution's a failed experiment, that we need to reject democracy and impose like a monarchical authoritarian rule. He harkens back to some anti-capitalist theorists of the 19th century, this character by the name of Thomas Carlyle, who hated commercialization, also loved slavery. So this is the type of character. But McIntyre says, well, I found Curtis Yarvin, and he gave me all the answers to COVID. But the problem here, this origin story has a major hang-up in it. And that is, in April 2020, Curtis Yarvin is a lockdowner. And not only a lockdowner, he's a lockdowner that makes Anthony Fauci look moderate and mild. He's saying we should have, in the United States, imposed a Wuhan, China style lockdown. And the only reason we didn't is because we're too fickle as a people. We lack the political will. We care too much about liberty to do what is necessary to defeat the coronavirus. So this guy's an absolute nutcase. He even calls in one of his blog posts at the time for the permanent cancellation of anyone that opposes lockdowns. Says they should be barred from employment forever. Because they are endangering society. I mean, this is the most totalitarian iteration of the COVID lockdowns that I think I have ever seen. And yet here you have this R.N. McIntyre guy telling Tucker Carlson, I was radicalized by lockdowns and I found this guy and he's the way forward. So something just wasn't adding up. And then I start looking around. You know, I was on the ground of the anti-lockdown movement, and I see all these other personalities, Mike Cernovich, Jack Posobiec. These are these new right characters. They all claim to have also been there on the ground of the anti-lockdown movement. I was there. I was in that movement. I didn't see a single one of them. And in fact, if you go back to their old tweets and their old blog posts from that era, they're also lockdowners. And yet they've claimed the mantle of this rather not so much to fight lockdowns, not so much to push back and ensure that Anthony Fauci never happens again. They've claimed the mantle of this because they use it as a basis for another ongoing assault against legitimate expertise in other areas. And I'm sure your listeners have heard people make this argument before. They say, well, the economists are wrong to oppose tariffs because they're just like Anthony Fauci. They're the fake experts. And we should discredit expertise.
Now you were one of the first voices against the lockdowns. You helped draft the Great Barrington Declaration. Is that right?
That is correct.
What was it like being in that fight before it was safe, Dr. Phil?
It was a very, very lonely place. I even had libertarians that were philosophically anti-lockdown, but they were saying, I'm afraid to speak out at this moment. Mm-hmm. I had credible death threats against me during those early months of COVID because of some of the things that I wrote. People were saying, you're endangering society by opposing lockdowns and spreading the notion that we should resist these things.
Yeah, you're a grandma killer and all of that. And that was coming from the right. I remember getting attacked by people on the right for being against lockdowns before it was popular. So, you have moral authority and you have credibility here. And yet for some reason, Dr. Phil, Tucker Carlson doesn't invite you to come and talk to him on his podcast. For some reason, they're not booking you on the other shows to say things like this, because maybe it's because the things that you're saying right now and right here on this show are the kinds of things that get you in big trouble these days. You're not supposed to point out that the people who are in charge on the right are hypocrites, I guess.
Well, that's exactly it. They're not only just hypocrites, they're just complete imposters who have invented this fake history about themselves. And you go back to the very beginning of COVID, some of the worst actors were on the political right. They viewed COVID with an alarm. I'm talking like January, February 2020, before Anthony Fauci seized the narrative and kind of squeezed them out. You had some people on the far right that were just hardcore lockdowners and COVID alarmists. They're like, this Chinese virus is coming from across the sea. We need to shut down the borders. We need to start taking all these drastic draconian emergency measures even before Fauci was converted to that position. And, one of the arguments that I make in the article is that they had an ulterior motive here. These are people who they rail against what they call globalization. And by that, they mean international trade, free commerce, free movement across borders, even things as simple as tourism and travel from abroad. These are people that are just kind of hardcore isolationist throwbacks to a version of conservatism from the 1920s. It's like Fortress America, and then we ignore the rest of the world. And they actually saw COVID in early 2020 as their moment, their opportunity. Yarvin writes a piece that says, globalization is dead of coronavirus. Let's kill it and bury it with that.
Another thing that has popped up recently, I saw you share a recent article from a fellow libertarian. Her name was Stephanie Slade, and she had written about the National Conservatism Conference where many of these post-liberals gathered recently. I say many, but maybe that's too polite.
Right.
But they gathered, and Yoram Hazony is an Israeli Jew who is one of the founders of the modern post-liberal movement, and he said that he was shocked that so many of the people who had had joined the movement and become national conservatives were anti-Semitic. He was shocked by that. Is that an example of joining the leopards eat my face party and getting your face eaten by the leopards, or?
Well, this is the thing. Hazony, about a decade ago, he declared open warfare on basically libertarians. He says that the traditional free market libertarian component of the right's political coalition has to go. We need to replace it by nationalism, both economic and cultural nationalism. And part of his project was you purge the libertarians and then open the door to bring in someone to replace them, the economic and cultural nationalists. And now here we are several years later. He's shocked that a political call to nationalists to join him has also brought in anti-Semites and weird race theorists and people who like eugenics and are a little too friendly to these crackpot scientific racism theories from the last century. Have suddenly shown up and entered into the coalition and to fill this void that he made by pushing the libertarians out.
Here's him responding to this on a podcast the other day. Hold on one sec.
These anti-Jewish guys are talking praise about Islam. There's something desperately screwed up going on. If you can't tell that the Muslim Brotherhood is here to take over your country, to overthrow it, and to make sure everybody ends up Muslim and there's no Christians and Jews left, if you don't understand that's the goal, and you're sitting there like imagining like that the Jews are trying to do something terrible to you when you've actually got Islam to do it. So God help you. I can't understand that.
Yeah, Yoram Hazony, he doesn't understand a lot. He doesn't understand why people like Tucker Carlson are defending Hamas and every other word out of his mouth is Israel.
Or the Hitler revisionism that's been all over. Not only Tucker Carlson has promoted like these Holocaust denier type fake historians. This has emerged all over the right. The Atlantic just had a great article that summarized like why are elements of the far right trying to rehabilitate Hitler, and you see this on the post-liberal X and Twitter feeds whenever someone like Hazony or McIntyre or Curtis Yarvin, they post these articles and commentaries that appeal to nationalism and social conservatism and cultural conservatism on a nationalist basis, and then the comment thread is people posting Hitler memes and pro-Nazi nonsense.
Or they love, for example, another one. Oren McIntyre also recently interviewed Alexander Dugin. And Alexander Dugin, didn't he call for the United States to be wiped out in a nuclear winter?
Exactly. So this guy he's a quote unquote philosopher that's on like the far right of the Putin movement in Russia. And you look at this guy's history, he's a complete nutcase. He emerged out of the Soviet Union. He created something called the National Bolshevist Party, which was basically merging Stalin and Hitler together as his ideology. So he's like a neo-fascist that works with anti-Semites, but he wants to merge that with like the greatness of the Soviet Union. There's nothing.
The Nazis and the Russians, instead of Pat Buchanan, where we work with the Nazis to beat the Russians and the Nazis should have worked together to beat the United States, and this is their hero. It's a very strange time in American politics, Dr. Phil.
Very much so. It's bringing back the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of 1939 when Hitler and Stalin unite to invade and carve up Poland. I mean, this is it's just absolute crazy stuff. And here you have McIntyre and Tucker Carlson's had this guy on as well. And they're promoting him as like this alternative philosophical voice that shows something the West is not hearing. Well, it's like the West is not hearing Soviet Nazism. It's just bizarre.
Yeah, the revisionism it pisses me off because I'm a big history fan, and to listen to people say Winston Churchill was the primary motivator in World War II is a bit nonsense. He wasn't the prime minister until does anybody remember? He
comes in later as Britain is losing the early part of the war.
Yeah. Remember the Peace of Our Time? The guy Neville Chamberlain with the It was the right-wing neocons for years who would always call us non-interventionist libertarians. They would call us Neville Chamberlains, and and now we have to deal with the Hitlerites on the right and deal with it. Say, well, Neville Chamberlain was actually a pretty good guy. He was trying to make peace with Hitler like he should have.
It's so bizarre to see this historical revisionism emerge, and yet I think it's revealing of the truth of where some of these post-liberal movements are going. They're really authoritarian in their core. They do not care about liberty. Some of them will say this in private. Then they'll make nods to liberty because they know if they speak in front of their audience and declare that the American founding was a mistake, although Curtis Yarvin does that on his blogging and podcasting. But if they said that in front of any normal audience on the right, people would be horrified.
Hold on, I have a clip for that. Actually, this is Candace Owens and Milo Yiannopoulos calling the American founding fake and gay.
This is how this country was founded, on a trumped-up Reddit libertarian hissy fit that was not really all it was cracked up to be, but was the basis for a destructive and a self-harm story. A founding mythology of a country that ripped out the natural system of government that is supposed to obtain over men on earth, and pulled God out of the system too.
So the American founding, fake and gay, because it was over a libertarian Reddit hissy fit, Dr. Phil. The American founding, and this is from a British man and a black woman who's married to a man from the British House of Lords, saying that we ripped out the natural form of government to replace it with an anti-God, secularist form of government. Honestly, if all that was true and America is what it is today, it's a great place to be.
Yeah, that's the fascinating thing. They always appeal to nature. And what they really mean by that, they believe that monarchy is the natural order of things. Monarchy ordained by God, coming from above. So they're really like throwbacks to medieval feudalism that some of these guys are advocating for, although they'll dress it up in philosophy. They'll dress it up in, we're restoring the true conservatism. But you see this rhetoric all the time. The founding is an obstacle for them, not only because it's popular in the United States. I mean, it's part of our heritage. It's part of our own political legacy and story. It's coded into our Constitution and in our Declaration of Independence. So they see that as an obstacle to this really throwback authoritarian absolute monarchy by divine right rule and hereditary princes and kings and successions of that nature. So it's very bizarre. Not only are they trying to rehabilitate Hitler, they're trying to rehabilitate like Henry VIII and all these horrible monarchs from European history that ruled with an iron fist. As I always joke, they view themselves as the heirs of this medieval feudal order, as the heirs of the aristocracy and the nobility and the class that would be dukes and lords and everything of that nature. But the only thing that I think they actually have in common with that crowd is the proclivity toward inbreeding among their own ranks. And yet they're basically declaring, hey, turn your society over to us. We know the feudal past, and we know the way that the proper order of things is supposedly aligned with nature, and we're your betters. We're meant to govern you and impose order on society. But at the end of the day, they're really just cranks and crackpots and really fringe thinkers.
Yeah, it's wild. I think a lot of the popularity, the reason for the views and the clicks is because it is kind of like watching a train wreck. Dr. Phil, you're doing a fantastic job. Like I told you before the show, I had to have you back on this week because after last week, everybody was clamoring. I had people sending me DMs. Where's the clip of Dr. Phil? They wanted to see Dr. Phil's interview. They didn't want to watch any of the rest of my show. They only wanted to watch Dr. Phil. So I guess I'll probably have to do the same here with this clip today. Dr. Phil, is there anything else that you think we missed? Any big points that you would like to make or something you'd like to share or even plug before we let you go today?
Absolutely. So the main thing I say, check out my Twitter feed, Phil W. Magnus. And then also I post my work on the Independent Institute. That's independent.org. It has all sorts of commentary on these and other issues. We're fighting the tariff fight right now. Also keeping tabs on some of these illiberal authoritarian tendencies emerging both on the Marxist left and the far right. So, again, independent.org and Phil W. Magnus.
Dr. Phil Magnus, always the historian with the receipts. Read his columns, follow him, Phil W. Magnus. And remember, if your favorite post-liberal pundit was screaming 15 days to slow the spread in March of 2020. Don't let them pretend that they were waving a Gadsden flag. Dr. Phil, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
This is my British coming out. I know.
No, it's, I'm gonna.
There is something a little similar about the way this country was founded to what you're talking about, which might suggest why this country is so vulnerable and so is so susceptible to precisely this kind of psychological and political warfare, because it is how the nation knows itself. How it was born was in a fit of injustice that was corrected by a few brave men taking a stand. That's the whole story of America.
Okay, so I'm interested now because this is going to bring us right into the occult and what they actually believe in, because you're right. The founding of America is an absolute myth. I'm actually reading a book.
Supported by the French.
But hold on. What is the book?
Oh, God. It's such cringe. I can't take it anymore, guys. All right. God, who is this? Who are these people? All right, guys. We've hit the $100 threshold in Rumble Rants. Thank you, Andy, for that little gift donation there. But everybody who donated today, and who went to thegriftshop.com. That means it's time for what can be only described as a corporate hallucination in human form. That's right. It's time for breakfast theater. I need my classical music. Dun, 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 dun. I have like little William Shakespeare, like theater masks. I'm going to make a little video for this little introduction thing, kind of like PBS would make. Breakfast theater. Dun, 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 dun. Only my brother's in the chat. Thank God. He probably could know what that song was just from me kind of humming it there. But all right, it's time. Breakfast theater. Brace yourself, guys. This morning's guest is none other than the Meta CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, who's going to be on our show today. Here's the thing. You cannot leave because we're going to have Mark Zuckerberg, or as I like to call him, America's least charming alien. Zuck has finally agreed to break his silence about the new whistleblower scandal. Have you read about this, the whistleblower scandal? This was a incident where predators were contacting little boys as young as 9 years old, using the VR headsets to get in touch with children. And this is very important. He would only agree to appear on this show if we let him do it while he was wearing like his corporate sensitivity. He wears like, you know how the Mormons have the underwear? Well, Mark Zuckerberg apparently has something like this. And as he was coming in this morning, this footage was released of Mark Zuckerberg heading to the interview this morning. Let me see if I can get you the video of this. And the military actually thought this was a UFO, but this was actually Mark Zuckerberg's transportation device. It was coming in over to the ocean from this morning. He was overseas. And as he came in this morning, the U.S. military, I'm kidding, this is a real video. This was showed in a congressional hearing by Congressman Eric Burleson. This is what they say was the unidentified flying object. Here it is. You can see it on this screen. They've got the target there. They're getting ready to fire the Hellfire missile. They believed it was a UFO, but this was Mark Zuckerberg on his, apparently it's an indestructive device. What is that water foil that he likes to ride on? This is Zuck coming in today, this morning for the interview. There it goes. Boom. Hellfire missile. Did you see that? And it kind of knocked him off a little bit but he's got that billionaire technology, kind of like Vladimir Putin does to protect his yacht. Look at that. There's the Hellfire missile. Comes in right there. Comes in from the side. Watch this. Watch the missile hit Zuck. Right there. Boom. Hits him. He continues on. Nothing's going to stop him. And that's Congressman Eric Burleson. You can see it right there as it continues to tumble.
This is when it zoomed out. You can still see it traveling.
Right there. Again, Congress thought this was a UFO. We'll have to have Eric Burleson back on the show again to discuss that, but I'll just let him know that if they called me to testify. It's Mark Zuckerberg. He's on the way to our show right now. He's going to be here with us live, so you can't go away because it's time for some breakfast theater. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Meta, and the emperor of your eyeballs. Thank you for joining me inside my trust terminal. It's made of data and tastes like denial. Let me begin by saying we take child safety very seriously at Meta. We always take our stock price very seriously, and those two values are not always friends. A few days ago, some people, cowards, leaked internal documents claiming we ignored evidence of predators interacting with children in our Horizons Worlds VR platform. That's not true. We did not ignore the evidence. We simply reassigned it to our new folder. Potential legal nightmares. Burn after reading. Then we deleted that folder, and the server, and the employee. Let me be clear. Meta has rules. We clearly state that Horizon Worlds is for users 13 and up. And we've even updated that language recently to say 13 and up emotionally. If children under 13 are using our headset, that's a parental issue, just like the birds, the bees, and TikTok addiction. Yes, some children have had troubling experiences in VR. But many have also had magical ones, like meeting their first corporate sponsor before puberty. Like, that's what we call brand engagement. There was an interview in Germany. A teenage boy told our researchers his little brother had been propositioned by adult strangers inside Horizon Worlds. Tragic, unacceptable, unhelpful to our quarterly earnings report. So we edited the final report. We removed the quote. We changed, "My brother was groomed," to "German parents expressed mild concern about vibes." Problem solved. Narrative sanitized. Look, I understand the optics. A multi-billion-dollar company deleting internal evidence of child endangerment. That doesn't look good. But remember, optics are visual, and Horizon Worlds is virtual. Therefore, the problem doesn't technically exist. Checkmate, regulators. Some have asked, Zuckerberg, how could you let this happen? To which I reply, how could you let your kid log into a metaverse called Horizon Worlds? It literally sounds like a pedophile cruise ship. You trusted a company that once let Russian bots elect a president to keep your child safe in VR. That's not parenting. That's delegating trauma. Let's talk about moderation. Meta uses cutting-edge tools to protect our users, such as delayed audio filters, reactive content flags, and a 37-year-old contractor in the Philippines who reads every word your 9-year-old types before passing out from despair. We're also developing a feature called Predator Ping. When an adult user approaches a minor, their avatar bursts into flames and screams FBI. We're still in beta with that. People say I'm cold, that I don't show emotion, that I blink like a serial killer in a solar eclipse. That's not true. I have emotions. Here is a complete list of my emotions. Discomfort, apprehension, stockholder anxiety, and light amusement, triggered only by goat memes and Peter Thiel losing money. Let's talk regulation. In Europe, the GDPR says you must delete any data collected on children without parental consent, which is why we now classify minors as short adults with limited browsing history. Problem solved. I want you to know we are all learning. We are evolving, and we are adapting. We've learned that the latest for Congress season is not a scalable strategy. We've evolved our legal team into a full-blown tactical denial unit. We're adapting by moving our headquarters to a blockchain-shaped buoy floating in international waters. In closing, I want to say to the families affected, we see you, we hear you, we know where you live. We've already placed your complaints into our automated empathy queue. Estimated response time, 2051. And to the child predators in virtual reality, your time is up. Not because we care, but because now you're bad for business. Thank you. This message will now destruct in 3, 2, 1.
All right, guys, did we enjoy our bonus content today? Hope that you guys got some value out of it. Had a little laugh. Is that the end? Yes, the show is over. It is Wednesday, though, and we're halfway there. We're not living on a prayer. I'm surprised nobody had something to say about our beautiful pineapple back there today. Nobody? No pineapple love? No pineapple love for our neon pineapple? I got that just for you guys. All right, fine. But thank you for the bonus content, guys. We appreciate that sweet, sweet moolah. If you guys like all the products that you see here on the show, you can get them at the Grift Shop, at thegriftshop.com. My embroidered Don't Tread on Me hat available at the Grift Shop. And if you want to get like me, the Pineapple Before Party shirt. There it is. I don't know if you can see it. There we go. The Pineapple Before Party. That's us, the Wake Up America show crew. We're the Pineapple Before Party. Don't go to the after party. Although I hear they have good drugs. It's the Wake Up America show. We hang out with good friends every Monday through Friday. We hang out with Frickety. We hang out with Quest Fanning. We hang out with the Rumble bot. He's just a bot. He's Mark Zuckerbot. Ike Giving a Shit. We hang out with my brother, Justin Peterson, who graced us with his presence today. Hey, JP. All of our friends hanging out in the chat makes it that much more fun. Thank you so much, St. Selma, for joining us. Is it a Diddy after party? No, BB. We've talked about this. BB for Liberty went to the Grift Shop and helped unlock that bonus content today. He bought an Eaton Bush 1969 hat, where Americans come first. Get that and more at the Grift Shop at thegriftshop.com. We'll see you guys right back again here tomorrow on the Wake Up America show and the 4 Liberty, say it with me, network. Now get out of here.
After an appeals court slapped down President Donald Trump's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA, to impose high tariffs without congressional authorization, he complained that if the import taxes go away, the U.S. will become a third world nation. That would be quite a trick. Despite the president's repeated claims that high tariffs produce greater national wealth, most countries that adopt them are very poor, while those that keep trade barriers low are wealthier. Third world status might be in America's future, but it's more likely to result from tariffs rather than from their absence. As Reason's Jacob Sullum noted earlier this week, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit upheld a unanimous ruling by the Court of International Trade that Trump exceeded his authority when he relied on IEEPA to unilaterally impose stiff import taxes. Both courts noted that Trump's use of IEEPA, which does not mention tariffs at all, was unprecedented and involved an assertion of authority that implicated the major questions doctrine, which aims to uphold the separation of powers, Sullum wrote. The tariffs remain in place while the administration asked the U.S. Supreme Court to review the decision. In his usual style, the president didn't just file an appeal, he also fulminated about his loss in court. More than $15 trillion will be invested in the USA, a record, he posted on Truth Social. Much of this investment is because of tariffs. If a radical left court is allowed to terminate these tariffs, almost all of this investment and much more will be immediately canceled. In many ways, we would become a third world nation with no hope of greatness again. Trump has repeatedly linked tariffs to the country's wealth. At the Conservative Political Action Conference in February, he insisted the U.S. was at its wealthiest relative to the rest of the world, from 1870 to 1913. That was our richest because we collected tariffs from foreign countries that came in and took our jobs and took our money, took our everything, but they charged tariffs. But if tariffs are linked to prosperity, it's an inverse relationship, according to a recent report on America's declining economic freedom for Canada's Fraser Institute. The authors, Robert A. Lawson of Southern Methodist University and Fraser's own Matthew D. Mitchell, write, high-tariff countries are generally low-income countries, while low-tariff countries are generally high-income countries. In the high-tariff countries, average GDP per capita is just $9,703 per year, while in low-tariff countries, it is $43,500 per year. In 2023, the U.S. had an average tariff rate of 3.3%, which put us in the company of such countries as Singapore and Hong Kong, 0% each, Brunei, 0.5%, Israel, 1.3%, New Zealand, 1.9%, Australia, 2.4%, and Iceland, 3.3%. This year's tariff shift has been marked by wild fluctuations, but the average tariff rate on April 15th was 28% and is now around 19%. That puts the U.S. amongst the likes of Zimbabwe, 18%, Chad, 18.1%, Republic of the Congo, 18.1%, Algeria, 18.9%, and Egypt, 19%. At 28%, average U.S. tariffs were higher than those of Djibouti, 20.9%, and Sudan, 21.6%, and exceeded only by the Bahamas, 32.5%. The U.S. used to have the sort of tariff rates that correlate with prosperity. The Trump administration is now emulating the trade policies of what he has termed in the past shithole countries. In all honesty, Trump didn't start this slide, and he hasn't been alone in eroding America's trade freedom or in dinging its overall economic liberty. As of 2022, the U.S. stood at 53rd out of 165 countries for freedom to trade in Fraser's Economic Freedom of the World EFW Index, having fallen from 8th place in 1995. That fall wasn't because of tariffs, which were relatively low at that time. It was because of non-tariff barriers of the sort that Trump complains are imposed on Americans by other governments, but which the U.S. has adopted to its own detriment in recent decades. U.S. trade freedom peaked in 1980 at 9.3 on the 10-point scale, began to slide for the next 2 decades, and then declined more precipitously in the last decade and a half, comment Lawson and Mitchell. Much of this decline was driven by controls on the movement of capital and people. In particular, the U.S. imposed steeper capital controls in 2009 and more stringent limits on the freedom of foreigners to visit in 2014. That is, despite relatively low tariffs before 2025, the U.S. wasn't as wide open as many people, Trump included, believe. Lawson and Mitchell point out that, with the exception of China, every country Trump has singled out for treating America unfairly is more open to trade than the United States itself. That's unfortunate because free trade doesn't just correlate with current prosperity. As seen from the list of which countries have high tariff rates and which have low ones, it helps countries to become wealthier. Few propositions command as much consensus among professional economists as that open world trade increases economic growth and raises living standards, Harvard University economist Greg Mankiw wrote in 2006. Anything that stands in the way of trade, whether it's high tariffs, controls on the movement of people and capital, or other barriers to investment and exchange, deprives people of the freedom they need to start businesses, create jobs, and improve their lives. High U.S. tariffs have a further perverse effect in that they tax Americans, effectively filling government coffers by punishing our own people for seeking the goods they want beyond the border. Eroding trade freedom reduces total economic freedom, of course. This year's higher tariffs are predicted by Lawson and Michelle to bump the U.S. from 56th place to 76th place for trade freedom in the EFW index, and cause the U.S.'s overall economic freedom rank to fall from 5th to 10th. That will be a real tragedy. Economist Deirdre McCloskey observed in 2016 that the enrichment and growth and human flourishing of recent centuries can be attributed to liberalism in the free market European sense. We've become wealthy from the freedom to trade domestically and across borders. The U.S. risks third world status as the president warns that danger lies in adopting the illiberal trade policies of countries that remain poor, largely through their rulers' bad decisions.